This morning, our first topic, as I did indicate at the beginning of the show, it has to do with what appears to be the president's hasty retreat he has beaten as far as free SHS is concerned. Now, the president says that he thinks that it's now time for Ghanaians to have what he calls a broader conversation about the way forward for the free SHS, especially that which has to do with the funding bit. And I asked the question about what may have possibly triggered the president's admission and acknowledgement that it is time. And I also did indicate that there's a background to this. Now, the free SHS started in 2017, and since then, we've had the former president, John Dramani Mahama, make a consistent and repeated calls for the policy to be looked at, because at some point, we're going to have some funding challenges. In fact, one of the things that I've heard some NDC communicators say is that perhaps we may have to suggest or come up with, say, a free SHS levy, that which to see whether we can use that to sustainably, to sustainably fund this policy. What I'm not too sure about is whether that's the NDC's policy. Maybe Murtala here will help us with that. But that's the background to it. We've also had CEOs. Africa Education Watch have also been on this call for many years. And they have actually been going ahead to state specific areas that can be looked at. But remember that anytime there have been calls for free SHS to review, we've had government communicators come out to tell us that as far as they're concerned, when the NDC says we should review something, it means that that policy is definitely going to die. They're going to kill it. It's going to be cancelled. So I'm wondering what kind of review the president is talking about now, because I want to know whether it's the same cancellation or the president has his own definition of what review is. But that's just my own, diatribe that I'm actually churning out this morning. And then we're going to go to the second issue, which has to do with something which has caused public outcry and outrage. It has to do with how our public finances are being managed by ministries, departments, agencies, and some state-owned enterprises. So the Auditor General, which is the external auditor for the government, has done his own work on how we have received and paid monies in these institutions, what we call financial irregularities. Now, we can't walk you through everything that's contained in this voluminous document because it's almost 300 and something pages. But what has happened is that the public appears to be more interested in how judges, 19 of them, allocated vehicles to themselves, and they bought these vehicles at a pittance. How did that happen? Policy, convention, law, what is it? Okay, and do we really even understand this whole policy where judges are made to buy their cars when they are retiring? We're going to get into all of that on Inside Pages this morning. And that which has to do with accreditation by some state universities, KNUST, Legon, running courses without accreditation. How did that happen? So we'll look at all of that on Inside Pages this morning. But let me just share with you the WhatsApp line for those of you who have views and contributions you want to make to the show. It's 0249 155 646. So you can see that clearly written on your screen, 0249 155 646. My name once again is Aldo Moro. At this juncture, let me introduce my resource persons who joined me in the studio who will be expressing their thoughts on the topics that we have advertised this morning. We're also expecting one other resource person to join us. But now, we have the Member of Parliament, hard-working Member of Parliament for the people of Tamale Central. And that's my very good friend, that's Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed. He's with us here. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. And it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Wow, I'm told you, somebody just whispered to me that you also, Paul Adumochi's very good friend. Your buddy. Anyway, have you guys resolved your issue?
Well,
there isn't an issue.
There's a crass difference between being principled and taken from a different state of mind.
Really? What does that mean?
Well, I don't want to pick on him. I challenge him to provide the opportunity to debate the issues he raised, and he seemed to be run away from that opportunity. For me, in a democracy, you should have equal spaces.
But Oladumatri is just a phone call away. I mean, you can just call him and tell him.
Why must I call him? He's not my friend, but I expect him to have me on his program. And you know, when you bring people on your program, attack them, you are a coward. If you have the platform that they do not have, create the opportunity.
Okay.
He did that to like Pebu. He did that to NDC General Secretary. He did that to me. I came on your program expecting to have you, so that I can tell you in your face how I feel, and maybe certain things that people of this country never heard. I would have said it. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. He came on the program. He used my pictures for his flyers without my consent. I mean, that is unethical. And when I say the program has been debased, there is every justification to that. He also advertised the program, and people who saw the adverts would think that I would be appearing on the program when I was not invited. And he made statements about me that were factually inaccurate. He attributed certain things to me that were factually inaccurate.
Okay.
And I think that the only way we can have a resolution for the good of his viewing public is to have me on the program. We're not going to exchange blows.
And debate the issues.
We're going to debate intellectually so that we would know who is intellectually deaf and who is not, because he said on the program that I was some kind of, a whole lot of, have me on the program.
All right. Okay, so that's fine. That's certainly not a
And
platform to discuss good.
Anyway, even if you want us to have it in his compound, I'm more than
you're
willing
ready
to
do that.
engage him, yes.
Let me also welcome the Executive Director of Africa Education Watch. That's EduWatch, as we affectionately call it. EduWatch. That's Mr. Kofi Asare. He's also here with us. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure for having me.
And as always, you're looking good, though.
Thank you.
I like your outfit.
Beautiful dress.
I'm mourning.
You're morning. Oh, where are you morning?
Yeah, I'm burying my brother this morning.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, later in the day.
Oh, my condolences. Yeah, Abdallah tells me that he literally had to drag you here because you were very reluctant to come because of the upcoming event.
But it's not too much of a deviation because the funeral venue is not too far from here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So lucky we or lucky us. Now let's do this.
My condolences.
So,
Thank you, Honorable.
yes, my sincere condolences to you. So let's do this. Abdallah, if we're ready with the videos, let's play the president's call for a broader conversation, national conversation on free SHS, and then we'll go back and look at the whichever style you want to choose. Abdallah, whether you want to do the former president first before the sitting president, whichever way, but feel free, please. Let's roll.
One of the things that people are calling for, and at some stage or another, the government has to organize itself to respond to it, is this whole. They talk about reviewing SHS. I think we should have a broader conversation about the incidence of education on our national development and therefore also on our budgetary and public sector contributions to national education. There are so many of the issues that you have brought forward, even though there are single items, all feed into the broader conversation of how much money is a society prepared to devote to education in all its various ramifications, whether it's talking about the feeding of children, whether it's talking about allowances for nurses and for teachers, we're talking about the level of monies that are devoted to scholarships, public scholarships. All of this should form part and parcel of that discussion. Already we spend considerable amounts of money on education in budgetary terms. I think you're aware of it, higher than virtually all the countries on the continent. But nevertheless, as you can see from your own recital, it's still, if you like, inadequate. Yeah, because if it was adequate, it would deal with the amount that is spent on students for the feeding program. It would deal with the issue of training allowances. It would deal with the issue of scholarships. All these are the direct result of budgetary constraints that there are in the system. Already there are some who are eager to curtail some of these important initiatives like the free senior high school policy. There are powerful forces in the society that are against it and who are insisting that education should be what your parents can afford. And they should all contribute to paying for education. The same with the tertiary level. But I have a different view. I think that it's a public good. The benefits of it for the nation, for the society are obvious. You talk about, for instance, the ratio of enrollment at basic school level. We've now been able to translate it into what, 95%. This is an extremely important statistic. It means that substantially, virtually all Ghanaian children now have access at least to basic school education. The difference between 95% and 100 is almost negligible. So, and therefore, it will be relatively easy to move from 95 to 100. Yeah. So that in itself is a major achievement for us as a country.
Leveling the implementation of the free senior high school system. Free senior high school education has come to stay. It is our duty to make it affordable for both government and all stakeholders in a manner that includes but does not alienate private sector institutions. A suggestion to review the program cannot and should never be misinterpreted to mean a cancellation of the program. Several notable voices since I suggested a review have also joined me in calling for another look at the program in order to improve it. It is my view, in agreement with the expressed concerns of others, that as private schools, you must reposition yourselves appropriately and work towards harnessing the benefits of today's digital revolution to provide quality teaching and learning opportunities. I'm emphasizing quality education in the repositioning agenda because it is only when access and expansion or affordability is indexed to quality in the provision and delivery of education that it becomes a key to national development. It was for this reason that the last two administrations of the NDC, the one under Professor John Evans Atta-Mills and under myself, prioritized quality in our educational policy formulation and implementation, because that is what is most important. I therefore challenge you to place the primary school level at the center of your strategic repositioning agenda. I know most of you have the full pass-through in basic schools and in secondary schools. And in this repositioning agenda, we must strengthen the primary level and begin to introduce digitization at the primary school level. Let us not only wait until the students are in secondary school before we begin to fully apply.
So that was the former president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, talking about the need for free SHS to be looked at again and explaining why he did not mean that the policy should be cancelled, as was being suggested in some quarters. Let me now come back in-house and start with Mr. Kofi Asari. He's with EdWatch. In fact, he's the executive director of EdWatch. In fact, he's issued a statement welcoming the president's call for a review because he's been on this for a very long time. Mr. Kofi Asari, it's good to have you once again. Now, what should we be welcoming about the president's call? Sorry about that.
We should be happy because we now have an opportunity to depart from the usual emotional attachment to the program that should have been always accorded the full status of a social policy rather than a political promise. And so, yes, we are happy that we are beginning to decouple our emotions from the management of the social intervention. Anytime you decouple your emotions from a social policy, it clears the way for you to look at the policy holistically and then an opportunity to provide the critical building blocks for its sustainability. But if you have an emotional view, an attachment to the policy, then there's something we call policy fetishism. It becomes fetish. So you are not able to have an objective assessment of the policy and may not see very far in terms of factors that may affect its sustainability. And that is why I think that for such a very, very politically charged policy compared to what we see in other countries like Uganda. Uganda's free senior high school policy is even more politically charged like ours. Almost all free secondary education policies came on the back of electoral promises. And so anytime the politicians or the proposing party, manages to muster the courage to subject the policy through the scrutiny that should be, you should always appreciate that particular effort. You can't be, the level of discourse we are having about free senior high school today is not the same, in other countries. It's still a no-go area because of the politicized nature of the introduction of free senior high school generally in Sub-Saharan Africa, with the exception of South Africa.
Right. Now, when I heard the president make this call, the first thing that came to mind was, okay, so what has changed? Because we know the president's posture in the past about a call for a broader conversation about free SHS. What has changed? Why has the president's posture changed all of a sudden about free SHS? Is this because now he understands where you and other critics of the free SHS in terms of how it has been implemented are coming from? Or there may be some other factors that you and I may not be privy to?
Well, we predicted that we won't have any option than to wake up and smell coffee in respect of the financing model for free senior high school.
Right.
Immediately, the economy took a nosedive. And I don't want to say that it is the economic situation which is making the president, concede that something must be done, or we must have a conversation around sustaining the free senior high school financially. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that because it's obvious. I rather want to say that it's unfortunate. I will wait for harsh economic realities to confront us before appreciating spending efficiency. Let me tell you something. African Development Bank, in their report of 2020, the Development Outlook for the continent, indicated that Africa as a continent was committing the second highest of its GDP into financing education. The continental average is about 5.1%. And we were only next to Europe. Europe was committing the highest of their GDP to education. But in that same report, African Development Bank indicated that even though Africa was committing the second highest continentally among the continents in terms of its GDP to education, when it came to spending efficiency, we were the last continent. And the report further goes to say that Africa was not just the last continent when it came to spending efficiency, but the distance between Africa, which was last, and the last but one continent, which is South America, was about 20 percentage points.
Interesting.
We were scored below 50 in terms of the rating. So you were not just last in spending efficiency, but you were so last that between you and the last but one was 20 percentage points.
That's very paradoxical, isn't it?
Yes. And it went ahead to say that if we were able to increase spending efficiency by just 10 percentage points and close the gap between us and South America and still be last, it will impact significantly on access to enrollment and then completion of basic education. So it tells you that there's a clear correlation between spending efficiency and access to and completion of basic and secondary education. It is not just about allocation. It is about spending efficiency.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying that with or without enormous resources, assuming Ghana didn't even have economic challenges and now we had all the resources we had, we wanted, even if we have a blank check, the key is still spending efficiency.
I see, because this conversation has actually been centered around the economic doldrums or the economic situation we find ourselves in, which is that we've come to a point where we don't have enough funds, we don't have enough money to be able to fund this free SHS. And so the president all of a sudden realizes that, look, because the money is not there, I will have to listen to calls for aspects of the free SHS to be looked at. But you're saying that that context if we situate it within that context, we're missing the bigger picture.
You will miss the picture.
The bigger picture is about spending efficiency, i.e., even if we had the entire, how do you call it? Even if we had all the money.
If there was no financing gap in our educational budget.
Yes,
Even
then,
if, yeah.
absolutely. So it's important that that clarity is brought to bear on the conversation.
You see, the education sector is one ecosystem.
Yes.
It has an envelope. That envelope contains resources. The resources available to that sector is supposed to be equitably distributed amongst basic, secondary, tertiary, special education, inclusive education, and then if you like, management and financing. Management.
Right.
Okay. Now, in terms of the thematic areas, basic, secondary, tertiary, how you allocate the resources in that envelope amongst these three is key. And that is where spending efficiency comes in. Now, I'll use this year's budget as an example. If you go to the appropriation bill, this year, we committed 17.7 billion out of the total budget of about 130 to education. That was about 13%. Already, that is below the international benchmark. The Dakar agreement it should be 20% allocation. Okay. Apart from that, in sharing this 17.7, and listen very well, we allocated 3.8 billion to secondary education, not free senior high school. Secondary education.
Loan.
Yes, secondary education is free senior high school plus the cost of paying teachers who teach in secondary schools and other recurrent expenditure and a little capex.
Right.
So free senior high school is only a fraction of secondary education.
Right.
So in all, we committed 3.8 billion to secondary education. Then we committed 3.85. Then we committed 3.9 billion to basic. If you work the percentage,
It's disproportionate.
basic is getting 22%.
Yes.
Secondary is getting 21.5%, which is virtually the same.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Now, we have 6 million children at the basic level and 1.3 in senior high schools. Have you seen the proportion? So you are spending almost the same amount of money you are spending on 1.3 million children on another 6 million.
Clay doesn't make sense.
So that is what spending inefficiency does. It will give you enough resources to develop your priorities or your spending priorities. Yes, you have money on a free senior high school to even buy calculators. We bought 400,000 calculators. We spent about we signed a contract for 63 million Ghana cedis for someone to deliver about 800,000 calculators. The person delivered half, 400,000.
Wow.
When in other countries, like at that same time in Sierra Leone and Liberia, students were buying the calculators in shops. Parents were buying it for their children because it's a WAEC sanctioned calculator. So our office in these countries were monitoring students buying that same CAPEC calculator in retail outlets. Parents were buying them. We said, we have money. Okay, so you can have money and buy calculators. Buy everything, including school cloth, PE kits, everything. But if you do that, what you'll be doing is that you will be depriving other sectors, especially basic education, of its proportionate share of the education resources. So it is not that there's no money. There will be money to do it, but the opportunity cost of running or delivering free senior high school in that way is always going to be an issue for the education sector. Don't forget that basic education is the raw material. That raw material is going to feed into the free senior high school factory. If there are deficits in the quality of the raw material, eventually it will affect the quality of production.
So, in essence, what you're saying is that we should be spending a chunk of our education budget actually at the basic.
We recommend 50%. Before free
We should
senior
more than 50%.
No, I'm coming.
Yes.
Before free senior high school,
Yes.
the percentage allocation of the education budget,
Yes.
okay, to secondary education started going up in 2015.
Yes.
So in 2015, we started committing into the 20s to secondary education. Prior to 2015, we were doing between 14 and 12. If you check the record, between 2015 and 2008, we were committing a maximum of 14% of the education sector expenditure to secondary education. But when free or progressively free secondary education came into the picture from 2015,
Yes.
the contribution, the percentage of the education budget to secondary started rising. It moved from 14 to 20. So if you check in 2016, we spent about 22% of the education budget on secondary education. So it is not sometimes true that free senior high school expenditure alone shot. No, it went up in 2016 because we started investing in infrastructure in anticipation of the progressive A.
Right.
So the disproportionate distribution of the education cake among basic and secondary started in 2015. Immediately you see secondary education getting 20% of the budget. Automatically, basic will reduce. And, basic should be around 50.
Right.
In 2012, basic education was getting about 55%. In 2012, that was when we were committing 6.2% or so of the GDP to education. So it is possible to fund free senior high school in a way that reflects the funding priority of government. But the opportunity cost of that approach is inevitable. And if you look at the infrastructure space, you will see the gaps. Okay? Now we have about 5,000 basic schools that are existing under trees and sheds. The number has been increasing since 2014. Okay? Since 2013. It has been increasing because we are not building enough schools at the basic level. Now we have about 25% of our primary schools not having junior high schools. If you go to the northern region, 60% of primary schools do not have junior high schools. 60%. That's why they have the highest primary to junior high school transition there. More than about 60% of students who leave primary schools drop out in that part of the country because only 40% of primary schools have junior high schools. And the distance to school is a major factor in dropout. So you see, the infrastructure deficits continue to widen when you are not investing more in basic. Because don't forget, as I told you, there are 6 million children there, but there are only 1.2 to 1.3 in secondary. So you must always ensure that there's balanced distribution of the resource envelope among basic, secondary. Tertiary, because government has adopted a cost-sharing approach to tertiary education for about 20 years now, tertiary is able to raise adequate funding to complement the little government is able to raise. That's why tertiary is not too much of a problem. In 2020, for instance, IGF from tertiary institutions alone and a few of the regulatory agencies constituted close to 20% of the education sector envelope. So tertiary institutions, because they're able to raise a lot of money from the IGF, it may not affect them much. But between basic and secondary, it is critical. And that is why I think that when we're having a discussion, we shouldn't be hearing questions like, so if we don't use the money to buy food for the children, what will we use our money for? Assuming that money is there. Using it that way is causing a lot of deficits, even in the senior high school system.
Yes.
Because there are huge, apart from the fact that government has secured a $1.5 billion loan to mainly expand secondary education infrastructure. That's the Dutch bond. Apart from that, we still have many infrastructural gaps in senior high schools. A lot of the senior high schools need infrastructure upgrade. So it means that even if we had money, even if we had no use for the money we are using to feed children, 1.3 billion a year, and we are not mindful that perhaps it should go to basic. Even within secondary, there are pressing needs within the infrastructure of secondary education, which will not be addressed or which have not been addressed because the Dutch bond was taken about 4 years ago. It's only 1 year more left. It will not be addressed by them, and that money is not adequate. So we still have needs within the secondary education system that we can use a lot of the money we are spending on consumption under free senior high school, which is about 70% of the budget, to support, so that holistically it will enhance the whole free senior high school program in the long term.
That's interesting. One of the things that I'd want us to look at when I come back to you would be what the funding options available to us will be. You can walk us through some scenario analysis and which one you think would best fit into our current circumstances. Let me now welcome Mr. Kamali Dean, who is the Deputy Director of Communications for the New Patriotic Party. He's joined us in the studio as well. Kamali, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. Wa alaikum salam, my brother. Good morning.
Good morning. It's you're looking good. I like your...
Let me sincerely apologize to the viewing public. But let
little did I know that there was a marathon organized. And
Oh, yes, yes,
everywhere
yes, yes.
is blocked.
Yes, yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's quite
Right.
inconveniencing
Right.
and really bad. I think the organizers and the police, Ghana Police Service, should have done the needful by informing the public, general public, adequately.
Yeah.
Because it appears that not me. Maybe someone is sick. Someone is rushed to the hospital. Being rushed to the hospital. All roads blocked. You can't go anywhere. No access. So the person passes away because it's marathon.
Yeah.
This is so serious.
So
I think we
quite
should get serious
irresponsible
about
on
it.
the part of the organizers.
It's unfortunate.
Actually, some of my production team members didn't
they're
turn
still
up
locked up
as early as they usually do because of the same problem. So
There should-
I can relate.
there should have been
I
adequate
can relate.
information
Yeah,
out there,
I
yeah.
can relate. That's fine. But anyway, it's good to have you. The most important thing is that you're here. Now, Murtala, Honorable, free SHS.
Give the honorable to him. Comrade,
The-
it's fine for me.
Oh, okay. Now, your party, the NDC, the former President John Dramani Mahama, have repeatedly called for free SHS to be looked at again, especially that which has to do with the funding. I'm sure when you heard the president say that yes, it is time, you would say, "Oh la la, we said it," right?
Well, Moro, good morning. Good morning to my brother. And bro, my condolences and to your viewing public, and most importantly, the good people of Tamil.
So let me put it this way: do you feel vindicated?
Well, when I heard the president, I said, well, uncontrollable ego is giving way to reality. That was what I said to myself. I just listened to the president and the video you played. I think as a president of a republic, you should be very sincere and honest at all times. The president said that there are people who are against the free SHS. Show me one single individual or group of persons in this country who is against free SHS. One. I don't think there is anybody. Show me one.
What is often cited is in 2015 when Radio Gold was playing all kinds of adverts, warning people that once free SHS comes,
Radio
people-
Good, the position was not that free SHS was not good.
right.
The position was that it was not a well thought through program as it was going to be implemented. The president had the opportunity when he was interviewed by Al Jazeera. Was it? I think Al Jazeera.
No, it was on BBC.
Or BBC,
Yes.
Shagasali, right?
Yes, yes.
When he was interviewed and they asked him about the free SHS, and he said he knew he was going to implement it. They asked him a simple question of the cost. He couldn't provide the answer. He said, I would prefer to provide the answer with regards to the cost to the people of this Ghana than provide it on that platform. And that for me was ridiculous. And when he came to Ghana, for several years until we went into the 12 elections, he couldn't until 2016. So the NDC's position was that the kind of free SHS the president promised he was going to implement was going to be a disaster, and disaster it has become. And if you ask me as to whether the NDC is vindicated of the issues we raised, for which reason the uncontrollable ego of the president prevented him from seeing through what we were seeing through, for me, I would say we are vindicated. And in any case, there was no a single civil society organization with the expertise in education that didn't take the same position the NDC took. Every single civil society organization that had some expertise in education, including some of our universities, raised the same questions the NDC raised. So if that is what the president thinks to be the naysayers and those who are against it, then we must as well find out a new definition for what constitutes someone or an institution being against of a policy such as this. As a matter of fact, I don't know my brother's background. I'm a trained teacher by profession.
No, I have no background in education.
Yes, I'm a trained teacher by profession. I know you are not. Kamal isn't.
Right.
A profession that Paul strangely mocked because he thinks that teachers do not have a place in our political discourse. I'm a trained teacher. And Moro, I've had the opportunity to have taught at all levels of education, from the lower primary, the upper primary, GHS, SHS, and at the university. I've had the opportunity. So I have some level of appreciation what constitutes free education and quality education. He made a point that I think was excellent. The most important aspects of education is the basic. Look, take a student to one of the best schools in Accra. Invest so much money in such a student. Let him complete the basic level. You take him to the remotest village in Ghana and put him in a school, that student will do well. Because the foundation is critical. The foundation is critical. Look, I've had the cause to have made the same statement when I had a radio program with you sometime. That I remember when we were in Kulkul school, none of us could speak English in the class. There was this girl whose parents had the transfer from Accra to Tamale. I think our class 4 or class 5. And it was only that girl who could speak English. And we couldn't understand why. None of us could speak English in the class, and that girl could. And we were being taught using the language we didn't understand. Now, a lot of these good schools, the kids are taught, first and foremost, they have some level of control over the English language. So averagely, by the time they get to the upper primary and JHS, whatever they teach, they have some appreciation. That is not to say that anybody who attended Saito school like myself, and I don't know whose school Kamal attended, those of us who attended school, is not to say that we may not be able to do well. But if you look at an average, those who attended the best schools, they do well. Why is it that some schools are described as the best schools? Take even the SHS, the senior high schools. To the extent that the Ghana education itself has identified, grade 8 schools, grade B schools. Go and check the students who attend the grade A schools and who end up passing with all A1s. Majority of them, the foundation was good.
Right.
Majority of them. You may have one or few people who may not have that privileged opportunity, who can also excel like those people.
Right.
But take the schools that we all think that those schools are deprived. They don't have adequate infrastructure. They don't have teaching and learning materials. They don't even have, they sit under trees. Look at the performance of those schools. So let no one deceive you into thinking that when we talk about free education, we should focus on the free, but not quality education.
Right.
And that was the position of the NDC. The NDC's position was that the Constitution itself says that education should be progressively free.
Right.
Article 25, and as student leaders, that was always our argument, that with nooks that, look, education should be progressively free. What we never attempted reading the entire provision, where
Which
it
was
says
subject
that
to the availability of funds.
of resources.
Or
We were never going
No,
there.
Because
in
we're
fact,
not interested in that.
Yeah, we're not. But we're interested in the fact that education should be progressively free.
Right.
When I became the Secretary General of the All Africa Students Union, and I dealt with several student leaders across the continent, I got to realize that it was not only Ghana that has such provisions in our constitution.
Interesting.
Almost every African country, they have a provision in their constitution that says that education should be made progressively free.
Okay.
And when he talked about the funding of education in Africa, in the world, that Africa comes second, I think, to Europe.
Right.
Africa comes second, but his focus was, how is that funding injected? How is it prioritized? Is it about we having 100 billion or 17 billion for the purposes of education? What percentage of it goes to what sector? And he made another excellent point, that the basic level is the resources. Is the resources of the factory,
Right.
the raw materials
Right.
of the factory. The secondary school is the production, sector of the factory, and perhaps tertiary education is where you have, if you like, the
So
finished
point is
product.
there should have been more focus at
There
the basic education.
There should be. He made another point, and I think that Kamal wouldn't raise it as an NDC's point.
Okay.
He made a point that we started having an increase in in secondary education from 2015. That was when we started the progressive implementation of free SHS.
Right.
Oh yes, but I'm saying, look, he's setting to facts that there was an increase, which was around 2008 to 2015, which was 14%. And by 2015, it jumped to 2016, 22% of the part of the education funds that goes to secondary school. Because there was massive infrastructure. We needed to see there are some students who may not have the means. And if they do not have the means and they also want to attain secondary education, what do? Government needed to do it progressively. And that was the agenda and the objective of the NDC. Now, this same phrase, SHS, which was recklessly and, to say the least, haphazardly implemented, and for which reason all civil society organizations and the NDC had problems with it, is that how do you make something free? When you implemented a policy of continuing with free teacher training allowances, with a quota of admission, it simply doesn't make sense. Look, I have said on several programs, I would prefer to have a trained teacher teach my kids than someone who is not trained. Because teaching kids is not just about impacting knowledge in them, but holistically helping them, shaping them in a way that you would want them to grow that they can fit well in society. You can have a student who is the best of his class, yet he doesn't have the training that you expect a responsible citizen to be, and perhaps that is the reason why we have tremendous corruption in our body politics, because you have people who have attended the universities, the check socks people, and they have all the degrees, but they do not have the true appreciation of what the ordinary Ghanaian goes through. And if you do not have that, the kinds of policy you implement will be a policy that you assess the suffering of people at a distance. You have the Minister for Finance himself, who holds the monies of the state, says that he thinks that the public exchequer, he says that the free SHS, he has a problem with it. Look, myself and Kamal, alhamdulillah, by the will of Allah, we'll be able to pay the fees of our kids. And even as Muslims, Allah says that the hand that gives is always better than the hand that receives, and that we should be encouraging giving. So part of the giving is that I am willing to pay those who do not have the money. Let them have it free. Because whatever I have is through the blessings and the mercies of Allah. So if I'm willing to pay, those who don't have, let me pay, so that those who do not have, the state pays for them. But why would you tell me that I pay a lot of money for my kids at the basic level? In fact, some pay dollars, thousands of dollars, every term for their kids' education.
But wouldn't it be discriminatory?
No.
That's the
why
fact
would
that
someone
you have
pay?
The means to pay.
That
means
is why
that you shouldn't be supported to pay for your
it should
children's
be
fees?
progressive. That is why President Mahama felt that let's provide them with free textbooks and exercise books. Let's provide them with free uniforms. Let's provide them with free sandals. There are students who are not able to go to school because they don't have uniforms. Their uniforms are torn. There are students who are not able to go to school because they don't have shoes to wear to school. Identify those who can, or make it open. If you know you can afford, there are patriotic citizens who will be willing to pay. Now, why would I pay several thousands of Ghana cedis for my war's education at the basic level? Then I go to secondary school, the state says, don't pay. Then I don't pay. Food is not available. I can buy food for my kids. They're in the same rooms with other kids whose parents cannot buy food for them. They're in the same dormitory. Why wouldn't you have reported cases of students stealing? So I'm saying that these were the issues the NDC and many other people in this country raised. They say that those who can pay, let them pay. Look, there can be a means by which you can assess to know those who can pay and those who cannot pay.
Yes.
When our kids were going to secondary school, there were forms we filled.
Yes.
Now you can indicate if you are willing to pay, pay. There are some who genuinely say they'll pay.
Right.
It was not only the Minister for Finance, a former Minister for Defense, Honorable Adukufo, himself raised issues about the free SHS. Now, if you attack the NDC and attack President Mahama for raising issues that were justified by all standards, why didn't you attack the Minister for Finance when he said that he doesn't think that it is feasible to run the free SHS?
I do recall what Adokufo said. He said at some point we would have problems with funding
Yes.
free SHS. Yes.
The reason why this president has now swallowed the humble pie is that the IMF, they may not necessarily say scrap free SHS. They will tell you that take a second look at the budgetary allocation for free SHS, and that's what they told them. Moro, does it make sense?
No, but that's pure conjecture.
Moro, I'm saying that.
No, that's pure
Moro,
conjecture.
I am saying
this
that.
cannot be a fact.
Moro, we know what is happening. We know the kind of negotiations.
Yes.
We know. Kamal, I have a privileged position you don't have.
Oh, no.
I have a position
so
you
you
don't
know
have.
this for a fact?
I know that for a fact. And let me tell you, Moro, why would you say that you are restoring teacher training allowances with quota? So take Tamale Teacher Training College, which has the capacity to admit, let's say, 500, 600 students per academic year.
Okay.
And government says, no, don't admit 600 students. Admit just 100 or 85 students. Because if you admit 600 students...
But first of all, was that training institute recruiting that 500, 600 trainees?
I am saying that this...
Was that the case in the past?
Exactly. They are given quota. And
They've not been giving quota.
Oh, yes. And you know why?
So they're no more recruiting the 500-600 people again.
And do you know why they have been given quota?
Why?
It's understandable. Take the number of teacher training colleges we have in the country.
Yes.
Government's payment of the allowances is contingent on the number of students who are admitted into the teacher training college.
True.
So government says that, look, we don't have the resources. Tamale Teacher Training College, don't recruit 100. 500. Admit 100 students this year. Kumasi Teacher Training College, admit 100. Accra Teacher Training College, admit 100. So what then is going to happen is that 400 students from the northern region who would have gained admission into Tamale Teacher Training College will be denied the ability or the chances to be admitted into the teacher
And
training
Honorable,
college.
you know this for a fact.
It's a fact. Oh, but the
The quota policy
the
is
Ministry of Education has
in
not.
place.
They have never. It's not only even the teaching, in the nursing.
The,
Even in
I'm
the
hearing
nursing.
this for the first
Even
time.
in the nursing. And let me tell you what happened in the nursing. What happened in the nursing was that
I'll come to you, Kofi.
you know what happened?
Just a second.
You know what
Yes.
happened in the nursing training colleges?
Yes.
And I remember when Honorable Koboy was then the board chair of Kolebu, teaching hospital. And I was with him on TV3. And I challenged him. I said that the Minister of Health had asked the institutions to generate money themselves internally. And you know what they did? They did something that was absolutely unethical. Any student applying to be admitted or for the purposes of admission into the nursing training colleges, after the application, can I finish?
It's about free SHS.
You are not the
Is that what it is?
You are not the moderator.
I'll get back to you.
You are not the
I'll get back to
moderator.
you, don't worry.
You know, no.
We
you
are
don't
talking-
do
just
this.
one second.
We have
Please
to
go
see.
ahead.
I'm surprised he's not getting it, but it's
No,
understandable.
he's looking at the whole idea of
Exactly.
the social
Making it free.
interventions. Yeah,
So
social
you
interventions.
see,
Yeah.
they then demanded that they pay a compulsory amount of 100 Ghana cedis without any receipt. So you had over 5,000 people applying to be admitted into the Kolebu Nursing Training College. They each paid a compulsory amount of 100 Ghana cedis times 5,000. When they knew that they didn't have spaces for 5,000 students. So you pay this money, you don't get them, and they admitted just few. That is robbery. And I'm saying that because they gave them a quota. If you admit more, it's just logic. If you admit to capacity, we can't pay the allowances. So we are giving you a quota for the purposes of an admission. Even with that, they are unable to pay. So clearly, you are reducing the number of trained teachers the state is supposed to get. You reduce the number of trained teachers. You have made it free at the tertiary level so that more and more students will gain admission. Who is going to take care of those students? Because a lot of these trained teachers, they upgrade themselves and they go to Winneba and other institutions to have degrees, masters to be able to teach in those schools. Last point. You see, I would have said, we told you so. But I don't want to dwell about education. It's something I am always passionate about it. I am passionate about it because I'm a teacher. I guess Paul is watching this program. And teachers are passionate about the future of their kids. The human resource base of this country is anchored on the quality of people we chain out from our institutions. Now, if you make it free, and there is one statement that has been made, and I hope Kamal doesn't make the statement today. We have been lied to in this country that but for free SHS, this number of students wouldn't have had, secondary education. Tell us what has been an increase in the number of intake, and he is here. He would prove me wrong. All right, because he has the expertise in that area.
Right.
Every single year, the number of students we admit into secondary schools increases every year, whether even before free SHS.
Okay.
Now, if assuming you had 100,000 students who sat in for the free SHS in 2016, and the following year you had 110,000, you can only say that, but for free SHS, 10,000 students wouldn't have had secondary education.
Okay.
But if you repeatedly say, but for free SHS, 110,000 students wouldn't have had secondary education, that is disingenuous communication. And in fact, go and check the figures. The number of increases enrollment into secondary schools, even before free SHS, increases every year. So what we're simply telling this government is that, look, it's good that the uncontrollable ego is suffering now. And it is suffering because of how miserable they have managed this economy. They can sit here and deny that the IMF has not asked them to take a second look at the free SHS. Okay. When the final report comes out,
right,
I would love to be on this program with him.
Okay.
And he will give me a white cooler and apologize.
All right.
That the IMF had indicated to them to take a second look at the free SHS
Let me do
fund.
this. Let me read this message by one Emilia from Accra. She says, please, what is your man saying? The advert in run said the free SHS was 419, etc. And she's talking about the Radio Gold advert. She said the implementation of free senior SHS would not have succeeded without the brute force the president used.
Moro, the
same
radio
people-
goal, does it represent NDC?
Yeah, let me read the message.
It's just like
said
Oman
the
FM
same-
say is MP.
Yeah, it's like the same people saying they are willing to pay now would have been the same people who would have gone to pay bribe to get the awards into free SHS.
Oh.
CMB scholarship is a typical example.
Even this one, people are paying bribe for admissions.
yeah,
And
so
we've had
that's-
reports of
that's
people saying they pay
Emilia
bribe
from
for
Accra.
admission, even with free SHS.
Sorry, Puta, let me just do this. And then this one here from, good morning, said, yes, good morning, this is Bismarck, Entry Boys contained president of Northford University College, and aspiring constituency executive member of Ejumako Enyan Isiam constituency. Now that the president and his Super Mario incompetent MPP have gone to learn the meaning of review, I'm not sure he's going to cancel the free SHS program. In 2020, when President Mahama called for the need to review the program for its proper sustainability, President Akufo-Addo said, we would not review free SHS today, we won't do it tomorrow. In 2022, just a few months away, we heard the president saying, we need broader consultation about the way forward on free SHS. This inconsistency from the president is worrying. What we need to do is, one, we have to strengthen the primary level to the junior high level, junior high school, before the students get to senior high school. Every parent who wants his or her ward to have a boarding house facility needs to cater for feeding and sanitation fees that is causing the collapse of the program. 3, the necessary spending, ostentatious lifestyle of the president and his appointees and the elephant-sized government needs to be cut down to save money. Lastly, we need to stop corruption now. It's no more elephant size. It used to be 126. It's now come down to 86. So that's. But before I bring in Kamaluddin, and then Kofi Asare would have his last, but because he's going to be looking at the options available with this review that it appears to be imminent. I want us to watch this video. We'll be right back, and then Kamaluddin will help us reconcile what we're about to watch and what we watched earlier. So let's watch this.
Senior high school policy is a policy for the development of our country. We're not going back on it. We're not going to have it reviewed. We're going to continue with it. We're going to improve on it. We're going to develop the infrastructure so that we can develop the human capacity of our country. That is the position of the new patriotic party and of its President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. No review today, no review tomorrow, no cancellation.
All right, so you heard the president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was emphatic that no free SHS review tomorrow, no free SHS review today. So, Kamaluddin, you're the Deputy Director of Communications for the New Patriotic Party. Help us reconcile the two positions that the president has espoused. Not long ago, we just saw what he had. Just a few days ago, I think 2 days ago or so, the president appears to be singing a different tune. Help us understand, unless, of course, you're saying that we do not understand what the president is saying.
Thank you very much. Once again, good morning to you and good morning to your viewers and also my brother and to Kofi Asare.
I apologize for being.
Of course, I had already apologized, but I would continue to do that if you want me to. But of course, I apologize for being late. Moro, you would have done Ghanaians good if you had played again the video or the current video of the president. You'd have done as good. Thank you. It is just fair. Yeah.
He made that point yesterday. Please.
Sorry, to be fair to Kamal, he wants that video to be played. He wants to do a content analysis of what the president said about whether indeed, in fact, what the president said about the way forward for the free SHS, whether indeed we got it right in the first place or we're shooting in the dark. So let's watch the president again.
One of the things that people are calling for, and at some stage or another the government has to organize itself to respond to it, is this whole, they talk about reviewing SHS. I think we should have a broader conversation about the incidence of education on our national development and therefore also on our budgetary and public sector contributions to national education. There are so many of the issues that you have brought forward. even though there are single items, all feed into the broader conversation of how much money is a society prepared to devote to education in all its various ramifications, whether it's talking about the feeding of children, whether it's talking about allowances for nurses and for teachers, we're talking about the level of monies that are devoted to scholarships, public scholarships. All of this should form part and parcel of that discussion. Already we spend considerable amounts of money on education in budgetary terms. I think you're aware of it. Higher than virtually all the countries on the continent. But nevertheless, as you can see from your own recital, it's still, if you like, inadequate. Yeah, because if it was adequate, it would deal with the amount that is spent on students for the feeding program. It would deal with the issue of training allowances. It would deal with the issue of scholarships. All these are the direct result of budgetary constraints that there are in the system. Already there are some who are eager to curtail some of these important initiatives like the free senior high school policy. There are powerful forces in the society that are against it and who are insisting that education should be what your parents can afford. And they should all contribute to paying for education. The same at the tertiary level. But I have a different view. I think that it's a public good. The benefits of it for the nation, for the society are obvious. You talk about, for instance, the ratio of enrollment at basic school level. We've now been able to translate it into what, 95%. This is an extremely important statistic. It means that substantially, virtually all Ghanaian children now have access at least to basic school education. The difference between 95% and 100 is almost negligible. So, and therefore, it will be relatively easy to move from 95 to 100. Yeah. So that in itself is a major achievement for us as a country.
Right.
The lawyers will say res ipsa licito. Clearly, no. You see, Moro. Let's get serious. This is a very big platform. Please allow me. Please, let's get serious. This is a very huge platform.
Right.
And I think it's important we situate the conversation where it's supposed to be.
Right.
No, please. I was very quiet and very civil when you were speaking. No, don't do that.
No,
Mutala, please, let's have a conversation, please.
Mutala.
And I'm saying that I think it's important we situate this conversation where it ought to be. Now, what is the talk out there? The president is calling for review of free SHS. That is untrue. Completely untrue. You have played the two videos. Please. And I think that is why you said that we needed to do content analysis of what the president said. Clear. Listen to the tail end of what the president said.
What's the president saying?
What did he say? You listen to it, I listened to the video. He said that there are those who are calling for the curtailment or, if you like, for review of the free SHS.
Yes.
But he holds a different view.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And to the extent that he said that today, where we are, the ratio of enrollment has increased. To the extent that he says that the general public actually enjoying from this policy where he says that, yes, I am not saying that those people making those calls shouldn't make the call. They should. But where he sits as a president, he's satisfied with the gains that we've had in education. But of course, there could be a broader conversation about national education. Please, he said that. And and that is why I'm saying that we should situate this conversation properly. And not to just go into town, talk to people, create an impression that the president is calling for the review of free SHS, as some people are doing, which is far untrue.
Yes.
Okay? And I'm saying again that, look, we as a people should be able to tell ourselves whether education is significant or important or not.
Okay, so hold on a
Now,
second.
yes.
Let me quote
Yeah.
the president.
Yes.
So one of the things that people have been calling for is the review of free SHS. I think we should have a broader conversation about
About national
incidents-
education.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
I think,
Yes.
and I'm going to say it, I think
Yeah.
we should have a broader conversation about the incidence of education on our national development.
Very well.
Now, although there are some individuals who do not totally agree with the free SHS policy regarding the aspect of feeding students
Yeah.
in the boarding houses,
Good.
as president, I share a different view on the program.
Yeah. So.
Now, he says the Ministry of Education is seriously looking at the issues raised by some individuals and civil society organizations to inform a policy direction.
Good.
To inform a policy direction
Okay.
going forward.
Yes.
Now,
So.
yes, so I mean, that's in a nutshell what the president
so
said.
did he say
no,
we
but
should
you can't
review free
entirely
SHS?
say the president is
No.
not open to.
But
He
you
says
cannot
there
also-
must be a
you cannot-
national
you
conversation.
cannot-
What is the national
So,
conversation about?
About incidences of education. He mentioned that. He's clear.
When he's talked about
you see,
feeding-
Moro.
Okay, please go ahead.
Moro,
Go ahead.
please.
Please go ahead. Okay.
This whole idea about free SHS. See, when they were speaking, I was very quiet, and I want us to make this clear. This whole idea about education, for me, is so important. The reason why the framers of our Constitution found space for it in Article 25 of the Constitution, as it were, to indicate that it is even a fundamental human right, okay, that is indeed something we must all have, or all must have. Fundamentally, no one disagrees with the policy that, look, be it NDC or MPP, that the young ones of this country be given some sort of free secondary education. No one disagrees, fundamentally.
Right.
Except to add that the NDC talks about progressively free, as they call it. Then the MPP talks about free education, as we also call
So you
it.
can say
and
the
implement the
NDC
same.
are gradualists, you are radicals.
Absolutely.
Okay.
September 2017, before even September 2017, when the budget of 2017 was read, some 211 million Ghana cedis was set aside for free education.
Right.
Or for secondary education because of the belief of the president of the Republic of Ghana
Right.
in the free SHS policy.
Okay.
Okay? That actually represented 27.3% of our budgetary allocation. I mean, annual budget, should I say, expenditure,
Right.
as it were.
Okay.
And it tells you how significant it is and how important and imperative it was to the president and, of course, the Ghanaians to implement same.
Okay.
Now, the question is, having had this implemented, some few years down the line, what has been the benefits?
Disaster.
Okay? Of course, I would want to agree that indeed, in the course of the implementation, there could be some hiccups. Okay? That is where this broader conversation matter would have to come in. We have aspects like Kufia Sare and aspects who are also watching us out there. We have people like Archbishop Palmer Buckle and the rest who also have their take on this education. But all of them come to center on one thing. What can we do to ameliorate it, to make it better?
Okay.
Okay? But nobody is saying scrap it or put it aside. Even the NDC, who claim that we were implementing free SHS but progressively, their budget in 2016, take the budget highlights. When I take the budget highlights, page 17 of the budget highlights in 2016, never mention even progressively free.
That's not true.
I'm telling you, I can give it to you. It's here. I have the document. I'm not just speaking.
The entire
I'm
budget.
saying that when you take the budget highlights, and I'm
highlights.
using my Westwell, page 17 of same talks about budgetary allocation to Minister of Education and gave pointers of where the money was supposed to be spent. Not even progressively free was mentioned.
Convenient.
What was mentioned had to do with their 200, secondary schools that they wanted to build. Even that they couldn't achieve. And I'm saying again that this budgetary allocation for education, which was about 27.3%, was 5-year time all high.
It's not
I should
true.
say.
It's not true.
Check it. The experts are here.
22%
For
in
5 years,
2016. That's
Ghana never saw such a budget for education.
That's not
That's sort of the commitment of this government, the commitment of Nanado to educating the people of this country. Now, you see, this talk in town, which has to do with review, John Dramani Mahama spoke up review, and Nanado went on platform to say that we would not review, which you played. Clearly, I agree that he said so. Others have called for review. Nanado has said that today we need some broader conversation around it. Doesn't mean that the free SHS is going to suffer. No. My brother erroneously sits here to say that the IMF And I'm happy when you drew his attention to the fact that he was conjecturing. The IMF has indicated to government that your budget for education was too much, and that look into it. That is what has actually given birth to this comment by the president. That is untrue again. We don't do this to Ghanaians. I am saying that the policy has come to stay. The president has indicated the policy has come to stay. I'm again saying that there are downtrodden people who lack much in society who are benefiting because their wards are in school today. He knows where I come from. I also know where he comes from. We know the level of poverty down there.
No, you are.
Go also to Volta region and look at the level of poverty. Go to Central and look at the level of poverty.
That's true, but
I am
come on.
saying that this free education, which has come to stay and which has come to help us, hitherto, if your ward or your boy or your girl or whatever had qualified to go to secondary school, you needed some at least 1,000 Ghana cedis to go and pay for
But
at
come on,
least
let me- just-
admission
just-
for the
just-
person
just
to
a
go.
quick one.
Today, the president of the Republic of Ghana says,
Right.
let the government consume that,
Yeah.
absorb that, so that you could be cushioned in a way
come
and
on.
we move on. Somebody
man,
says
man-
it's not a good idea.
No, but come on, my understanding. No, hold on. But my understanding. No, sorry.
Yes.
My understanding of a social intervention program or policy
Yeah,
is that it's actually targeted at the poorest of the poor.
very good.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's my understanding, unless, of course, I'm wrong. Now, if it is meant to be targeted at the poorest of the poor,
Yeah.
what business do we have paying for rich parents?
That's very interesting. I mean, I love that. The finance minister, like he rightly said,
Yes.
indicated same and thought the way you have
So
just.
doesn't that, for
See?
instance,
You
warrant
see, it has
this
to-
whole thing, talk about review?
First of all, take a holistic view of the economy we are running
Right,
and ask ourselves,
right.
what data do we have that seeks to give us a credible information that this is the rich class and this is the poor class?
Kofi Asari can
with all
cite
respect,
about 4
please,
credible data.
please, with all respect, with all respect.
Okay, please go
I am saying that
have
if
data
you have even, I'm talking about national data
Yes.
available to us, that look, when you go to, say, for example, Central Region, we have, say, maybe 10 parents who are so rich that they can even pay for their wards education.
Right.
Have they even owned up is another matter. Okay, the data may exist. Whether or not they have owned up is also another matter. Then we go to all the other regions and ask yourself. You see, normally I have always mentioned that, look, you cannot develop and you cannot implement policy properly without a coherent data supporting same.
Right.
So if, for example, you have a checkered atmosphere of data and you are yet to implement, again, supposed to implement an important policy like the free SHS, okay, then the idea comes that, look, get the rich to pay, get the poor to pay. Who is the rich and who is the poor is where the question will have to arise here at the end of the day. Are you getting
That shouldn't
me?
be
Now,
difficult
if
to
that,
tell.
no issue, it's very difficult to tell.
not.
Even in this room, trust me, we are in a country where many of us will not say that, look, let me go out there and do something to even better the development of this country. We are all out there saying the government, go and do this for us. Our roads are bad. Hospitals are bad. Government do this. At the end of the day, even paying taxes, take the data that we pay taxes. How many Ghanaians pay taxes as in this country? I have heard President Mahama, okay, lamenting on that, saying that, look, how many of us pay taxes? And the money that we pay, we get
Are we
from
discussing
for
that?
government had to do with taxes, had to do with the taxes that we get from the people to develop. He has mentioned it before. So I'm making a point that, look, if we're in a country where we have a character of not supporting government properly, then a policy like this comes, then somebody says, why don't you allow the rich to pay? How do you identify the rich, and even how well is committed the rich person to even pay for such
So
things?
come on.
So
If-
these are the challenges that
if
we can
if
we
that
envisage.
data, if that
Yeah.
data was made available to you and not just you as an individual,
Yeah.
to government, credible data, will the government be amenable to the review of the free SHS in a way that allows for people who can pay to pay?
I thought when you read the transcribed version of what the
Yes.
president said, you did indicate that the president had indicated that the education ministry
Yes.
was even in talk with
Yes.
most people
Yes.
to look at how they can fashion a
That's
sort of
what-
this around.
that's
it.
what
I'm
makes,
saying
that's what makes
I'm-
your
no,
stance
no.
that there isn't an review happening. a bit
No, I am
problematic.
saying.
So what is the
if
education
you listen
ministry-
to me, I'm
Okay.
choosing my words well.
All right, please go
If
ahead.
you listen to me, we're talking education in
Right,
general,
right.
and of course, however, what is on the table has to do with the free SHS. And I'm saying that going forward in the conversation, you are talking about how we can identify rich people and what we can do. Then I then said here that at the end of the day, is some conversation going wrong. Okay, there's some conversation going on. Now, once this conversation is
everything
going
is
wrong,
fine, what
at
is
the
the
end of the
conversation
day, it's about education.
Yes,
It's
but
about
everything is
education.
fine.
It's
As
about
far as the
education.
president says he's satisfied. He's fine
Yeah.
with the way SHS is being run. Perfect. So then there's no point having any conversation about it.
Moro, let's be fair to the president and the government of the day.
Okay.
The implementation of the free SHS, a scale of 1 to 10, if you're going to look at the benefits to the public and benefits to society, okay, where would we place the government? Obviously, I'm not saying there will not be hiccups. There are hiccups. But as a result of free
been hugely
SHS over 3
beneficial,
years,
no doubt
the
about it.
people
It's
have
been hugely
benefited and been
beneficial.
even in the university as a result of this policy.
Yes.
So therefore, if you are going to look at me, if I'm going to score it, I'll say 7 over 10.
No, it's 4.
Clearly, I will do that. And I'm saying that there are negatives, but what are we going to do to ensure that those negatives are also nipped in the bud? That is where we are now.
Right.
And we continue with that conversation.
Okay.
The major problem around this whole thing has to do with money, finances, budgetary, what are allocations. And I'm saying that even ab initio, the government of the day committed some whooping amount of 211 million to even see to it, and continued in subsequent budgets, as it were. So clearly, I want to say that this policy has come to stay, like the president indicated. This policy will ensure, we will ensure as a government, will continue to benefit the larger populace of this country, and there will be no cancellation of same, and of course, we to be protected and well protected. As
Kofi, I
well.
know you have to leave us because you're burying your younger brother today. So if you can, in a nutshell, address these two issues for me,
offended.
please,
Come on,
please.
this is not about
Hold on, because somebody has to come. Somebody has the floor now. Kofi, there are two critical questions that I'd need you to help us understand. One, identifying persons who cannot pay genuinely, so that the policy targets them, and persons who can pay, so that the policy allows them to pay for the awards. Oftentimes, we have heard government communicators say, yes, show us, give us a data. If it's accurate, we'll work with that data. Nobody has been able to come up with that data and to say the government, here is the data, you can cross-check it, and we're going to use that. And we have just 30 minutes to wrap up on this show because we have to deal with the auditor's report. So, Kofi, if you can deal with that question, and then the second question about scenario analysis in terms of what options are available to government, if indeed it wants to go ahead with this review. If you can do this briefly for me, I'll be very happy.
I'll do it briefly because one of the reasons why I want to hurry up and leave here is because
The politicians will hijack the
yeah,
conversation.
this is my first program with two politicians, so I'm feeling quite uncomfortable. Okay, so, but let me quickly indicate that in terms of the year-on-year enrollment on the free senior high school, it has been consistent. It's not, it doesn't, as Honorable Mutala was saying, I normally hear that version, that the numbers would have increased anyway. But if you do a year-on-year analysis, you realize that the numbers have increased at a faster rate. You understand? So in terms of the access, it is not a comparison between the 900,000 that were in school in 2017 and then the almost 1.3 now. It's not just that, but if you look at the year-on-year increment, you will see that there is progressive because before free senior high school came, the year-on-year increase in admission to senior high schools, the average was 3%. It was 3%. Before free senior high school came, the average year-on-year increase in admission was 3%.
Right.
When free senior high school came in year one, that average immediately increased to 17%.
No,
Can I access some? Can I
Then and it is normal of every social intervention policy.
Right. Because
Okay.
it's free.
Can I ask some questions
And then,
so that you can proceed?
then the next year,
Yeah.
that average increases to 19% year on year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's astronomical.
Then when you begin to get to the point where there's optimum, near optimum transition, and as you measure the percentage, you realize that we are increasing the transition rate between junior high school 3 and senior high school 1. It used to be about 60%.
Okay.
Now it's 90%. So as the year-on-year percentages increase, more and more junior high school 3 students are now transiting to senior high school. That's the meaning. In the year 3, it increased to 19%. Then in year 4, it begins to reduce to 8% because more and more people are now crossing. And this year, it's about 8%. I hope you're getting me. It means that, and this year we got to the point where about 90 to 91%
I get it.
of BEC candidates
Okay.
are now crossing. You understand? So year on year, it has been consistent. Next year, it will reduce maybe, let's say, 6 or 5%. But it may not mean that it is not making an impact. It is because more and more people, percentage-wise, if I say percentage-wise, I'm talking about percentage of people who are, more and more people who are BC candidates are being are transiting to senior high school proportionally.
Okay, that's fine.
But let me say that the discussion, another unfortunate aspect of our discussion is the issue of where is the data to target.
Yes.
You see, if you go to Europe and study the discourse about how Europe introduced their free secondary education, okay, in those days, that question of give us the data and we'll target, that question was rather a question that question was rather answered by governments then. Listen very well. In Europe, when they were implementing their free secondary education, the question of where is the data, show us and then we'll target. That question was rather an answer from government to the citizenry. Yeah. Because it is an obligation of the state.
Of course.
It is
Or
an
to produce
obligation.
the data.
Yes.
Are you getting me?
Yes.
What we are being asked by government that there is no data. So if
Show
you
us
have
data.
it, show it so that we target.
Yes, yes.
It was the reverse situation in Europe.
You didn't even do that.
Government rather came with the data.
Yeah.
Because the obligation to produce that data is not a citizen.
the state.
It's a state.
No, but I thought he
Because
was
we
going
have,
to give us the data.
we have,
So
we have the
Let's
Ghana.
discuss
No, he says he
service.
can show you
I
where
thought
you
Kofi
can.
said he was going to give us data.
No, he will.
He's not giving us the data.
He will. No, he will.
why
Don't
must
worry.
he provide the
No, he said
we
he
have-
said he
No,
had
he
the data.
will. Come on, hold on a minute. Don't worry. He will. He will.
So we have
Yeah.
turned the debate upside
down.
The context is wrong. We must reverse it.
Yeah.
Which
It
is
shouldn't appear as if government is using the lack of data as an excuse
Yeah.
to implement a policy in a way that is very, very, very politically convenient.
and that excuse is untenable.
Absolutely.
The excuse is actually the excuse, if it holds, means
It's
that
lame.
government is not effective. Because it is government's job to produce that data, not us.
Okay, so then you can also ask the fundamental question that what data then the
I'm
government
coming there.
stand on?
I'm coming there.
Okay, fine, that's fine.
Okay, but here is the case where, in our case, the data is there.
Okay.
But we are saying we can't see it.
Okay.
You understand? We can't see it. But data is there. The most recent GSS, Ghana Living Standard Survey, 7, which was published by the Ghana Statistical Service, presented data to the effect that the first quintile of the population, the 20% of the population, the first quintile, have an average household income, if you extrapolate it from annual to day, average daily household income of about 9 cedis. Okay. That's the poorest of the poor.
Right.
About 20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they even give
So the
regional breakdown.
Yeah. The households, the poorest households, 20%, are spending averagely 9 cedis a day. And 2/3 of that money is going into food. It says that the average household, the average household in Ghana spends 35 Ghana cedis a day. I have extrapolated it from the year to the day. 35 cedis a day. Tells you that the average Ghanaian can afford 5.5 cedis a day. That's recent high school feeding money.
True.
5.5 cedis a day.
Right.
Okay. So again, it tells us that there's some 20% of Ghanaians who cannot afford that. Now, the fact that GSS collects household data, you know, when they're doing the census, the reason
Yes.
why they didn't interview
With
in
the
your
Ghana
office,
Statistical
the
Survey.
reason why they didn't interview in your office is because they have to interview in your house.
Yes, true.
It's a household survey.
Yes.
They have the data of the location of all these people who are having household incomes of less than 6 cedis a day. And this was even in the COVID year. We know, in the COVID season, we know that incomes were reducing. Okay? So GSS has the data. They have it. The second thing is the Ghana Household Registry. About 9 years ago, we launched a Ghana Household Registry hosted by the Ministry of Gender. The Ministry of Gender has been doing a beautiful work on that particular program. You know what they've done? They are documenting poor households in Ghana. And they've covered 6 regions. Even within the COVID period, they did something in Greater Accra. That is why when the finance ministry was dispensing some cash to poor people during the COVID as part of the Ghana case, that's why you didn't get some, because you are not poor. Every month in this country, the Ministry of Gender, okay, under this government, dispenses cash grants, mumu,
Heavenly.
to 1.5 million Ghanaians
Every month.
from over 300,000 households.
Yeah,
The
it's
reason
so.
why you and I have never received that money is because there is data to show that we are not poor.
poor.
For that matter, there is data to show that they are poor. Let's not be doing this to ourselves. Okay? Let's not be using the presence of data or the self-induced, the self-induced lack of
Data.
appreciation of data
As basis.
to be a reason. No. If what we need to do is that the Ghana Household Registry is now in 6 regions, and it is going on. It should be extended. There's a plan, okay, but it is not a priority because it takes less than a year to do census. If we have resources, we can complete the household registry within 6 months. Because it's covered the northern region already. The poverty endemic areas, top there, all covered. Okay, and the down part of Greater Accra during COVID. So if we prioritize it within 6 months, we can have the complete data. But I see an opportunity for synergy because of the GLSS 7 data we have from Federal Service. I see an opportunity where the Ghana Household Registry can plug in into the rich data that the census people collected. We have the data. It is because we in Ghana here and like many other African countries we work in, the average African does not want to have difficult conversations.
True.
If you opt for the easiest way out, it will not take you far.
Yeah.
But if we spend time developing an infrastructure for deploying social protection programs, the state will benefit because the state will now stop paying my child fees, and now we're paying even more to the person who is in Tatali Sanguli, who actually needs more than is getting.
Yeah, but the fear is that would then dilute the policy, wouldn't it?
No,
What the dilute?
I have a question.
Free SHS.
There is free
You have your
basic. Yesterday, I heard someone on Asempa FM say that if we can't do it free food, free everything.
Okay.
I heard someone say on Asempa FM that if you can't do it free food, free everything for all Ghanaians, then we should throw it away because it's in the constitution. So if you can't make it free for everybody and we have to ask somebody to pay something, then we should forget about it because it's in the constitution. The question I wanted to ask the person, I never had the opportunity, was that there is free basic education. That one is actually is obligatory.
Yes.
Okay. It is not subject to the availability of resources. That one is straight. It's obligatory.
Ovi.
How many schools are we feeding in this country after 15 years of implementing free basic education? And 30% of the children in Greater Accra, almost half of the children in Greater Accra are attending private schools. Why are they not enjoying free basic education? In the whole country, 30% of students are attending private schools at the basic level. Why are they not getting their version of the free basic education? If you go to Germany, they have free education.
Some very legitimate.
They have free education in their.
Muru,
If you
that's
go to Germany and
what I'm
other countries like Luxembourg, Austria, they have free education at the basic level.
Yes.
Okay, in basic schools. But if you choose to attend a private school, you are given your stipend. You are entitled to a coupon. The coupon is the cost of how much government is paying for your free basic education.
And then you take care of the rest.
If the coupon is 10
cedis.
10 Ghana cedis a
Yes.
year, we give it to the parent. If you want to take your child to association, top up and take him. We've fulfilled what we define as free.
But their public schools
Okay,
haven't
so
been
if you are not, so if at the basic level, you are not asking the question that why are children in private schools not enjoying free Ghana school feeding program and free capitation grants? Why are they not enjoying?
Because they're not the target.
I do not get. So why are you saying that we are going to vary
I get it.
the
I get it.
senior high
You've
school?
answered my question.
If it's not entirely
You've
free at
answered
the
my
basic level, you can't have the discussion because
Yeah.
if we had enough resources, even all junior high schools in the public schools should have been fed free.
Yeah.
But no junior high school is benefiting from free
Yeah.
the SFP, the school feeding program. If you go to South Africa, they have free school feeding program from kindergarten to senior high school. And I'm coming to one of the cost-effective approaches.
Yes.
Look at the models being run in South Africa. You go to kindergarten and your senior high school is in the school.
Yeah.
What's a senior high school? Let's be honest. After junior high school, the student will move to a senior high school. They will do science, business, and arts. It is 3 rooms, classroom 3. It's 3 because the same class size. And then you have a science laboratory and an IT center. That's what you need to add to make it a secondary school. Because if you go to the secondary school, that's all that is there. It's like a classroom and dormitories, and then the science and the lab, and then the IT center. If you go to South Africa, that's how they model their free senior high school. So the set is feeding only once a day, and then it's day. So they structured it that way. If you go to Kenya, they have a hybrid.
Yeah.
What is the hybrid? The hybrid is that, yes, we have some schools that are boarding. If you want to attend those schools, you pay something. But in the poverty endemic areas, according to the poverty map, which is available,
And which we
let
have in
us
Ghana.
build senior high schools in every junior high school, as I just said. So that instead of building a 3-room and call it junior high school, let's build 8 rooms and call it a secondary school in Binaba Let's build it there.
Progress.
Okay, so that you won't have to go and travel and become a border in another community and pay so much.
Right.
The teachers who will teach in the junior high schools, if they are, I shouldn't say if they are upgraded, because even the qualification for the basic teachers is even higher. Because normally you can
it's
teach in
difficult
secondary
to teach
schools
if
if
you
you are
are
not
the lower
trained.
common, right.
But you have to be a trained teacher with a BA degree before you can teach.
Exactly.
Basic level,
And
yeah.
it's even
So
difficult.
if we can let the teachers there do extra work or get more teachers to do the training there. In areas where there is poverty, okay, and we know that people cannot reasonably afford boarding education, we can have this approach there. And then in the areas where we think that you live close to 5 kilometers to Tamale Secondary School, we don't have to waste our time in the municipalities because we have the school there. So there is no straight jacket. If you go to Argentina, when this free schools thing started, I went to Argentina in 2010 and Brazil studied all this. They have a mix. They have the provincial schools, they have the day schools. So you can have a day school concept as I'm discussing, which is economically efficient, for the rurals, for where there's poverty. Yeah. And then still have our boarding system where you know that the average Ghanaian who has the capacity to pay how much a year? 1,200 Ghana cedis. 1,200 Ghana cedis for feeding their own children. If the children were home, they would have given them food. So that the average Ghanaian will decide to do that. Then the poor have been adequately taken for because we are not creating the impression that day schooling is of poor quality. That's not an impression.
I get it.
Moro,
Wow.
So we have options.
You haven't looked at the
Moro.
different models that the government can look at.
Yeah, so-
in terms of what they can take out, what they can add, and all of that.
But if we, in the short term now,
Yes.
we have short term measures we can
look at.
We are all thinking broadly, okay? So these
I'll
are
come back to you,
alternatives.
sorry. In fact, we may not be able to discuss the auditor general.
No, me, I
because-
just-
because
I
we
just-
don't have
I
time.
just
Sorry.
want some
No, don't worry. No, we
We
still
are-
have about it's 9:40. So we will shelve the auditor general's report to next weekend. So
We are thinking broadly,
Yeah,
okay?
please go
So
ahead.
these are not
No, the auditor general,
direct
that one
proposals,
is very
broadly.
important because it
Now,
explains
the
what
first
we
option for
experience
government
and
is
the
that
district.
in the short term now, between now and the next 2 years, what government can do is the government cannot vary the structure. The government has invested so much in expanding secondary education along the lines of boarding.
Right.
So nothing can change in the short term.
Okay. So what should
Other than that, we will lose as a country for investing $1.5 billion in infrastructure expansion only to change the paradigm and let's say that. Because if you expand existing infrastructure, it means you are expanding it along the line of boarding because 70% of our schools are boarding.
Right.
So we can't change that in the short term. Other than that, we will lose as a country.
Okay.
So in the short term, what can we do? There are some items on the bill that government pays that if you remove them, it will not deny Kofi Asare, who has no money's child, from going to secondary education.
What are these
If we take out school uniforms, PE kits, church cloth, exercise book, not textbooks, exercise books and notebooks, these 5 items.
Yes.
It will save Ghana government.
You mean for all schools?
Yes,
That would-
we are buying for everybody.
But that
If
would
you
be disaster for
If you
some
take
students.
it out,
No, because there are some
That
parents
would be
who genuinely
disaster,
are so
and that's why
poor
we have
that they can't
problems
even
with
afford
how they
yes,
implement
even
it.
school sandals.
if you take this out,
Yes.
you will save about 200 million Ghana cedis.
Oh, that's huge.
That 200 million can build 400 junior high schools in the northern region right now.
No, but we're saying
Okay,
that-
now, if you take those out, you will not deprive Kofi Asare's son from going to school because when Kofi Asare's son was in junior high school, he wore a uniform to school.
Some didn't, some do not.
But I'm coming.
I'm telling you.
I'm coming.
So you see,
Kofi Asare's. Listen. If that concept, if you want to bring in that concept, then you will say that all basic schools, especially in deprived communities, in deprived district, the 75 deprived districts in Ghana, as categorized by the Ministry of Education and Engineers, should have free exercise books and free uniforms. That's why we have continued to question why government in 2015 cancelled free exercise books in basic schools. And then in 2017, government introduced it in secondary schools. Do you understand? So if you want to go that tangent, then you say that
he wants to ask a question,
everything-
otherwise you forget. And we will give you time for you to exhaust this. But he has a question he wants to ask. Please.
I think you've taken us around the world and given us instances of how education, if you like, free education is even held in some areas. Now, what's the major issue here in this country? The major is so simple. Funding. Challenges. That somebody thinks that we don't have much money, therefore we should look at it and then review it to get someone to contribute. The question I want to ask, have you averted your mind to the directive principles of state policy of our constitution? Article 34, have you?
Yeah.
Very well. If you have, and that is where, when people jump to, let's review, let's do X, Y, we have averting their minds to the fundamental law of how policy ought to appear in this country is dangerous. So my
what
question is,
has that
if
got to
you read
No, just tell us, what does that have to do with
see, my point here
reviewing
is that,
a policy?
My point here is that he just sat here when you made a great suggestion that, look, we could take school uniform alone out. And my brother said, no, that would be dangerous.
You see,
Why? Dangerous because he thinks that you also went ahead to say that, look, even at basic level or junior high
don't have
level,
free
people
uniform.
have gone and he said some did and some didn't have.
That is the reason why
it's a
the
reality.
way the NDC
So I am
implemented
saying,
it was the best.
Just by us here, those watching us outside also have some sentiments they would need to bring to bear. The point I want to make is that if you start to do cherry picking in implementing policy in a developing country,
So
that will be a very dangerous
targeting
trend for
cherry
you.
picking. So
I'm telling you.
So it means that you have a problem with the fact that you have a problem with the fact that last month when government was disbursing Momo transfers to LEAP beneficiaries, you didn't receive some. You have a problem with that?
No, clearly the policy stipulates who is supposed
Is that
to
not
receive
is that not cherry
Same
picking?
thing.
That is not.
It is.
That is not. It's not discriminatory.
So why is my mother?
If
Why is
all
my-
of us, if all of us
yes.
were in that category, if all of us were in that category, and then of course it chooses to go to someone doesn't come to
In
me,
what
that's
category? In what
discriminatory.
category? Oh, what's up
Of
with poor?
what does LEAP stipulates? Who qualifies for LEAP?
Those who are poor and vulnerable.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Anyway,
Well,
okay, no, please,
no,
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 please,
no,
no.
no.
So you are saying
Can I-
so now
can I
you're
have
not
my-
calling
There's a certain
targeting
principle.
cherry
Can I
picking.
have my
There's-
bite?
No, you will. There's
I
a certain
want-
principle we're trying to establish.
yes.
And the principle here is that
Yes, if you have money.
the country Ghana must spend efficiently its resources. And one of the ways it can do that is look out for people who genuinely are in need and sort them out. And we've done that with LEAP. So he's asking, why can't we do that with free SHS as well?
You've done it in other sectors.
Because, yes, in
Moro,
other sectors
Moro,
as well.
I
Because
just-
you see,
Moro, I have a
if we
suggestion.
don't, and we keep questioning, so sorry.
There are some
I'll come
category
to
of
you.
Ghanaians who enjoy free NHIS, right?
Yes.
Yes, free NHIS. It's
There are
because
some
they can't.
category, right?
Yes.
Is that cherry picking?
Well, to a large extent,
even the
it will
secondary
not be cherry-picking.
education.
Okay, so that's fine. So Kofi,
There are 3 million Ghanaians enjoying Ghana school feeding
No, Kofi,
program.
let's move
in
on.
the
I think you've made your point.
in the Western North, for instance,
Yes.
only about in some constituencies, in some
Kofi,
districts,
Kofi, you've made
only
your point.
40% of schools are enjoying Ghana school feeding.
That's fine. You've made your
In
point.
poverty, if you go to in poverty endemic areas, especially in Tatali,
Yes.
Satali Sanguli and then
Yes.
Zabzugu, for
You made
example,
your point.
you will see a primary school where there's free school, Ghana school feeding
Yes.
program, but there's no feeding
Kofi,
program in the
Kofi,
junior high school.
Kofi,
Is that
Kofi,
cherry
Kofi,
picking?
Kofi, you made your
So
point.
if you use that point, then every policy government does in Ghana here should benefit everybody.
Must be uniform.
Then you at one point will say that, okay, you won't understand why fuel is sold to fishermen at a cheaper price, but it is so. I am a farmer. It is sold to us farmers at the same price as the consuming public, but it is sold to another farmer who is called
a
the
cheaper
fisherman
So your
at a
point is
different
that
price.
every
so
pro-poor-
it is
so every
never
so-
cherry picking.
so
It is
social
an-
interventions-
it is the mark of an effective government system.
So social interventions are deliberately discriminatory.
Exactly.
Deliberately
Positively discriminatory.
Positively discriminatory.
Yes, because
That's how social
resources
interventions-
are
positively.
because
Right.
resources
Now,
are
when-
scarce.
no, when he's done with the scenario, you
No,
can
I'm saying
wrap
that
up.
listening to him.
Yes.
And listening to Kamal.
No, he's given us scenario one. He says, look at the bills and take
No,
some
I don't
things
have
out.
to forget.
What scenario
The
two?
second
No,
one is
no,
that
please
the feeding-
jot it down.
the feeding
That's why I
aspect.
gave you the big pen.
The second
If I didn't give
scenario.
me the pen, I came with my pen.
The second scenario is the feeding aspect.
Right.
Okay.
The feeding aspect.
As I said, it costs 5.5 cedis to feed a child a
child.
day.
Okay.
About 20% of Ghanaians per GLSS may not be able to afford. About 20% of households may not be able to afford that. If we say we don't want to use the data to target, we have an option. Option one is that in the poverty endemic areas, we have the map there. Okay, you can decide to waive the feeding fee for those ones, and then the other places you allow them to pay. You see, if half, listen very carefully, if half of Ghanaians are allowed to pay the feeding fee and the free senior school is 70% of the budget. If half of Ghanaians are allowed to pay for the feeding fee, which is 1,200 Ghana cedis the whole year, not a semester, that money will be enough to feed the other half, even if the half were poor. Think very well.
True.
Okay, and we are talking about, but you see, there are so many interests. Why am I saying so? Because the feeding program under the senior high school, it's no more with the schools. It has been centralized.
Yes,
And we know
it's
those.
at the
We know
flag-
those who are
Flagstaff
procuring.
House.
We know those who are procuring food.
At the Flagstaff House.
It's a
They are
$1.2
there.
billion
He knows.
industry.
Oh, that's massive.
So it is difficult, not impossible, it is difficult to convince those who are benefiting from the centralized procurement of food
Family
to say that,
friends.
okay, let's agree that parents should pay. Because immediately parents start paying, they are losing their business. So their interest, but our interest, okay, should be how cost efficient we can be in managing the little revenue the taxpayer pays. Don't forget, IMF will not solve our problems. Our debt service obligations keep increasing. And as a country, once we are not able to raise adequate domestic resources by way of taxes or non-tax revenue to fund our budget, so far as we continue to have a situation where the revenue we generate is not enough to pay wages and service debt, it means that we are running all social intervention programs on loans.
Yeah.
If you are running your social intervention programs on loans, be minded that you don't spend majority of that money on consumption. It is not sustainable.
Thank you very
Moro,
much.
I said
what I'll
on-
do is,
I said on-
we have let me just say this before you come in. We have 10 minutes to. No, sorry, actually, we have.
They all spoke more than me.
We have 8 minutes.
Actually, they
We have-
all
no,
spoke.
I'm just saying
I'm saying that
we
they
have
all
8
spoke
minutes.
more than me.
We have
but
8 minutes to wrap up the show. So what we're going to do is we're going to split.
Oh, when you came, I didn't know you were
fair,
speaking.
Yeah, we're going to split the 8 minutes such that you can take about 4 minutes and then your man takes 4 minutes.
No, you should take 2. I take 6 because they all spoke more.
No, 4 minutes is fine.
Moro,
4 minutes is fine.
nobody said that free SHS won't make the numbers increase. But he knows that with free SHS now, whether you pass or you don't pass, you are allowed to progress.
So that's the difference.
That also adds up to the
there's no
numbers.
cutoff.
There's no cutoff.
Okay.
Now let's ask ourselves, how many people sat for the SHS exams in 2016? Juxtapose that to those who sat in the first batch of the free SHS. The 2016 was more than the free SHS first batch. He knows that.
The numbers reduce.
Yes, they reduce. So it is not just about making it free, but ensuring that all those you have made it free for, they are able to progress from first year to third year. The last batch of the secondary school exams, those who sat for it, were more than the first batch of the free SHS.
So let's say 100,000 enters SHS.
And by the time they write exams, they're left with 60,000.
About 60,000.
Yes, you would have done.
Where's the 40,000 gone to?
Exactly, that is the point.
There was a problem with that data.
So I'm coming.
There's a problem.
No,
with
but
the data.
Private
So it's not
schools
accurate.
data, well, yeah, I remember that data
The
came out
private
when
school-
government announced that they were paying the WASI registration
Good,
fee
yes,
for it.
good,
During the COVID,
good,
there was a problem with that data.
Good.
Okay, that's fine.
It hasn't reduced.
The data, no.
The dropout rate at the free senior school is less than 1%.
Hold on, the data.
100%.
Hold on, the data was
Please go ahead.
the data was provided by the Ghana Education Service.
Yeah, there was a mistake in it.
There wasn't any. There wasn't
It's
any.
faulty. It's a fault.
This is
There was
the
a
first
mistake.
time we are hearing that the Ghana Education Service and the Ministry of Education never told us there was a mistake in it.
Oh.
I'm saying that that's data. It's in their website.
Okay, so keep going with that data because
I'm saying that.
the GS hasn't come out
can
to
I?
deny
Can
it.
I?
So
Can I?
It was corrected later.
So
it was corrected later.
you see.
Okay,
Hold on. I'm saying
No, let's
the
make
40,000
progress.
is his figure. He's just giving an example.
Of course.
Hold on,
Yes,
come on.
No, please go ahead.
The
Please go ahead.
40,000
It explains
is
the
his
private
figure.
candidates.
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
Exactly.
that's
And
fine. Please go
two,
ahead. Yes.
the other issue has to do with the issues I raised, that
Yes.
you have mass movement, whether you
Yes.
pass or you didn't pass. It all adds up. But no one has ever said that with free SHS, you won't have the numbers increasing. You will have the numbers increasing. But you see, the NDC has, in fact, there's a clear way by which you can identify those who can pay and those who cannot pay. We all know, even in Accra, we know the private schools that charge the highest, we know. Now, if students who are applying to be admitted into senior high schools check whether they attended private schools, primary and GHS, and depending on the standard of that school and how much they charge, you'll be able to determine parents who can pay and those who cannot pay.
Right.
Of course, you would have one or two who maybe because they were working, they
You
had
can mop
stable-
up. You can mop up.
I'm saying that you have one or two,
Yes.
those who were working and a stable job. Maybe by the time the kids get to secondary school, things may be difficult. But you cannot have a perfect statistical data.
True.
You can infer and say that if my Kamal children, my children, and I believe his, are all attending private schools.
Yes.
We pay a lot of money.
In fact, his first child is in GIS.
Kamal,
really?
we see, everybody in this room knows that Kamal is the richest. Everybody knows.
Don't malinform people.
So I'm
out
saying
there,
that
please.
I'm
Moro.
he's attending
it's
the
too
school that
early
no,
for
he says
He
mischief.
mobilizes the resources.
It's too
That's
early for
himself
mischief.
no, that's even more expensive than
That is
GIS.
too early for
All right, please go ahead.
mischief.
So,
Please,
so,
please.
So the
As a
point I'm
Kamal,
making is
that-
that you see, it's
Too early for
it's
mischief.
easy to identify.
Right.
Before any student gets to secondary school, he would have attended basic school, primary GHS, before he gets to secondary school. Now, if you check in the students list, this student attended GIS, GHS, DIS, or Merton, GHS, Merton,
Yeah.
and he's applying to be admitted at Accra, Accra Girls.
Okay,
You can easily tell because they are paying thousands of Ghana cedis.
Yes.
Some of them pay dollars.
Yes.
You don't have a perfect, but you'll be able to at least to identify those who can afford. Go to Tamale or Bolga. Even within Tamale, there are no private schools that are charging the highest. Then they'll be able to know that the children attended primary school, private school, JHS private school, and then they want to go to Ghana school, because every student in the north wants to go to Ghana school, not Sanargo experimental. They want to attend Ghana school. You'll be able to tell that this parent can afford. There are several varied means by which we can identify those who can. There are some Ghanaians too, who genuinely will say that I can afford. And therefore, I don't want to benefit from the free SHS.
Okay.
The Minister for Finance says that he can pay for his child and that he can pay for 20 more. The Minister for Finance says that.
Yes.
Now, why can't we do this? Okay. There's another very important point that I want to make. Come on. You see, when we talk about education being progressive, and why I had a problem with when he said that we should withdraw the free uniform, the free textbooks, and others.
No, free exercise book, not textbook.
No, you said free exercise book, uniforms, sandals,
School cloth, yeah.
school cloth, and
Yeah.
I am saying that we are all coming back to the same point President Mahama was making. Okay. And the fact that our idea of making education progressively free is to identify those who cannot afford. In fact, not even in the rural areas. I realize that all the poverty is totally, even peri-urban.
Yeah, there are poor
Go to the suburbs within Accra and you'll be shocked. The level of poverty that people go through.
Right.
There are statistical evidences. Whose responsibility is it to identify the data? The Ministry of Education has said data of communities and schools that you have kids who can afford. The Ghana Statistical Service responsibility is it to provide the data to government. You don't ask civil society organizations to provide the data.
Right.
It is a symptom of how you have messed this economy.
All right.
And one of the reasons why they are not able to do that because you cannot increase the number of presidential staffers and increase the budget of the office of the chief of staff, not the office of the president, the chief of staff, to over 400 million Ghana cedis. 400 million Ghana cedis between 2016 to 2020. 2016, there was an extra budgetary, over expenditure by 20 million.
Okay, so let me go
This
to
year,
yes.
that last year, extra overspending by over 400 million.
All right,
and you
fine.
think that we don't have the
Come on,
resources to
please
do
wrap
that?
up. Please wrap up for us.
Moro, I think this conversation, like I said earlier on, has to do with whether or not there was a statement coming from the president calling for a review.
Yeah, he did.
Which I sufficiently sat here to say or to indicate from the videos that you have played that it is not emphatic. There isn't something.
It was not emphatic. He's changing his
Now,
voice.
please. That it means that the discussion, of course,
No, it's okay. It's not
wetted. But
emphatic.
the point is that
Come on, please go ahead. Don't be
to
distracted.
have
Don't be
said
distracted.
that
Initially
it's
he
coming
said
from
he
the
did not.
president
He
is
said
zero.
it is not
Now,
emphatic.
Moro,
So that's
again,
okay.
I have also sat here, and Kofi has also indicated that, look, all of us in this country, and even those outside the country, knows how important education is to us. And we have maintained that, look, a pace has actually been set. What is that pace? Ensuring that basic education is free for all.
Okay.
What can we do to sustain it? The government of the day is committed to it. Other stakeholders are coming on board with suggestions for us to ensure that this policy that has been implemented sees sustainability
Fantastic.
for us to move on, as it were, as a
Fantastic.
country. So nobody can take this commendation away from the government, of the day. That, look, ensuring alone that the young ones of this country have had education
Right.
is imperative.
At the expense of quality.
Let me do this.
education.
Dawuni
should
says, good
clap
morning.
for
Please ask Murtala. Murtala, please, hold on. I need to do this quickly, I beg you. Good morning. Please ask Murtala how many less privileged students he sponsored in Tamale when there was no free education.
Can I
It is,
answer that
it is in his
How many?
constituency, you
How
can
many?
find many dropouts.
Oh, no, I would have to answer
he's
that.
there talking politics. The people of Tamale Central are listening. Perhaps from Dawuni.
No, but let me provide this answer. In fact, before I contested the elections, I organized free classes for secondary students because they could not finish their syllabuses.
Okay.
Last year,
Yes.
in fact, I organized free extra classes. And there were over 1,225 students.
I think you've answered
I'm
this
coming.
question.
I
You've answered the
provided
question.
every
We
student
don't have
with a
all the time.
mathematical set and T&T. And this year, there are about 1,500.
As it
And I
was-
didn't do it from common fund.
That's fine.
So that one should listen.
I said to call Isaiah inside the Joaboso says, good morning, panel. In fact, I love Mr. Kofi Asari's analysis. His points are flawless. I salute you. And Alhaji Hamza from Pig Farm says, Moro, we are where we are today because the disrespect from this government to the good people of this country. They will not simply listen to the advice from experts when it comes to education. I remember when the JDM called for review of the free SHS, functionaries and communicators like Kamal Dean called him names and said JDM review means to cancel. They should stop playing gamble with the lives of the future leaders of this country. Today, JDM has been vindicated. Honor Mutala this morning has made my day, and I salute him. Halaji Hamza from Pig Farm. And Sam from East Legon Hill says, please ask Kamal Dean how we're able to identify lead beneficiaries if he's saying that there is no data to identify the poor and target them from free SHS. And Paul Ibrahim, it's like the president and his people are not keeping their promise, will not go to IMF and will not review free SHS, but now they're back too. And so my problem now is whenever they are on stage, they start to defend IMF is different. We're not reviewing my boss. Politics is sudden generator. Look, I have tons of messages, but I can't read everything yet. My name is Mo Rado. Thanks for watching another edition of Inside Pages. Same time next week, Saturday, we'll be right here. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.